Hello and welcome to the Carmudgeon Show, part of what? Should I be clapping?
Yeah.
Okay.
Derek Clapton, let's go.
I did it.
You see. Okay, so hold on. We'll introduce him in a second, but I've just been telling people, my buddy Mark is like, Derek needs to quit it with the whole clap shtick. And I'm like, it's not a shtick. And you looked at me and I'm like, no, it's real. Like he's just, instead of just going like this, he just does the whole, pushes the microphone away, does the whole thing.
At least I've started moving the mic.
It's
Progress.
funny, but it's real. Anyway.
I have been listening to this show for years, but I've never actually watched it. So that was the first time I've actually seen Derek clap.
Oh, yeah. No. Well, his name is Derek Clapton.
I'm aware.
For my poor abilities
your poor
at clapping.
ability.
So yes, go ahead. Were you
And
gonna
his
say something?
name, because
Yes.
your name we know, and his name is Matt Kwiek.
Yes, and
me.
he is a Mercedes specialist who often corrects any errors of the numerous errors that we may make in the course of Carmudgeoning, which is, I'd say, fundamentally why he is here.
Mostly accurate.
Yeah, mostly
Okay.
accurate, substantially
Mostly
accurate,
accurate.
more accurate than most of the internet
Okay,
drivel.
but if we are given an accuracy rating, where are we on the line? Like individually? Like, are you mostly correcting me, or are you actually correcting the encyclopedia himself?
Mostly you.
Yeah, I thought so.
Yeah.
Okay. I just make shit up as I go along.
I do my own research. No, sorry. I'm not going to use that
You're your own
phrase.
internal fact checker. You know, people, he's like, well, that had 228 horsepower. You like have like, you just, yeah, anyway.
I just like to be sure before I say anything.
Where numbers are concerned, round up, round down. What's the difference between 217 horsepower and 227? Are you going to be able to tell the difference?
Nope. My
Perfect.
butt dyno won't either. In any case, Matt is joining us because he helped with, he did effectively, provided the motor for my engine swap of my wagon and did the swapping itself as a follow-on to Car Week. And he is a moderately long-time listener, first-time caller. And in this episode, we'll talk about Mercedes engine swaps and some license plate comedy as well.
Plus, we both drove a C126 500 SEC with an M113.9 something swap and a .6 722.6 tranny swap. And if you don't know what that means, well, then you need to tune in. Well, hold on, I've already tuned in. Then you need to keep listening.
Yes.
I'm going to bed.
All right. Buckle up, enjoy.
Do you want to just clap again? Just do it.
No, I don't want to.
Come on, please. Yay! As a kid.
That counts.
That counts. It was live.
Yeah.
I never got fired.
It's because you you didn't fully develop the vocabulary that would get you fired just yet.
I did not curse at all as a child.
Yes,
Of course, I
because
say
you
that
would
right
have-
after
You
Paulo
would
runs the
have
cameras.
been crucified.
Yeah, after I was burned at the stake. The remnants, my skeleton would have been crucified. Yeah, no, I'm making up for it now. Fuck. See?
Were you were not in the Boy Scouts, I take it, because that is where most learned to curse.
No, summer camp was pretty good for that. But yeah, mostly just, we're in New York. How you fucking doing? Means good morning, you know.
Right.
So, sorry to offend your California self.
I mean, if you heard me when I was driving, then I think you would know that I'm
And by
not
that you
capable of being
mean-
offended.
Every single time you're driving.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even from the back seat. It's amazing.
Oh, yes. Any seat, anytime. I mean, I'll do it in an Uber.
Do you really?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Because I'm sure that an Uber driver wants to, say stuff. That would be, I could never be an Uber driver
No.
because I would road rage constantly and I'm sure my rating would be poor. But so I do it from the back seat with the Uber driver and then they're like, okay, this
They laugh,
person
yeah.
is okay and I don't have to hold back. So
Yeah, I think driving for me is I have to constantly narrate what's going on, because if I don't, I'm going to explode. Like, it's got to come out in a slow, steady stream of steam, or there's going
as
to be a
opposed
pressure
to
buildup.
like going thermonuclear on a particular
Maneuvering a
motorist. Yeah.
Prius into a wall.
We've all wanted to do it.
In other words, welcome to our
Yes.
friendly. This is a friendly place. You're
Thank
safe.
you.
It's not, and you're not.
Yes, I've listened. I'm aware.
Okay.
Long time listener, first time caller.
First time.
You're calling
Oh my
so
God.
aggressively.
We're going to have to put you on the board for all of our visitors. We've got
Yeah.
James Engelsman and Sam Smith ×2.
How exciting.
But that K0.5J is Kentucky Half Jew, which was my nickname for him when we worked together. You are Tennessee ex-Michigander.
Yes.
Okay. Then we're going to have to incorporate that in your name somehow.
Somehow. Okay.
Okay.
So, of course, the question is, why are you here? Do you want to?
That's a little bit rude. Why is Paolo sounding like a dog in the background? Crying.
Paolo is a dog today.
Yeah.
Now we know. It was never a
Yeah,
lie.
you can confirm that in fact
Paolo is in fact
a
a
dog.
dog.
There is, in fact, a dog who was crying over there, and I feel very badly about that. But,
It's okay.
First of all, housekeeping.
Yes.
I have questions for you.
Yes.
I want you to channel your home state,
Okay.
and I want you to say, that glass is fabulous.
That glass is fabulous.
A little bit slower, and channel your home state.
That glass is fabulous.
Yep. So the first thing about Michigan is you gotta. I'm going to make fun of Michiganders now, right? So you have to close your nasal holes, and then talk like that.
Yeah.
But then that glass is fabulous. So you have been out of Michigan for a while, I can tell.
A little bit, yeah.
Or by design, right?
Yeah.
You sort of try to get rid of the vestiges.
But there is a reason why I bring that up.
Okay.
Sorry.
Oh, this is the housekeeping.
Yes. If you talk like that and you pronounce car and glass and that and
Car, yeah.
car, right?
Yeah.
Car.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then you are probably within driving distance of Detroit.
Yes.
And if you're in driving distance of Detroit, you should come and see the Carmudgeon Show live, we think, on September 23rd.
At the Detroit Concours d'Elegance.
Yes.
Which
Allegedly.
allegedly
It's
is
allegedly
happening.
elegant. We're going to find out. But we're going to be there. This will be my first Detroit. Your first Detroit?
Yes.
Concours?
My first Detroit anything. I've never set
kidding,
foot in
no.
Detroit other than the airport.
Oh, well, the airport's really good.
Yeah.
DTW is a really good Detroit Wayne airport. It's very good. I lived in Ann Arbor. Ann Arbor. Can you say that?
Ann Arbor?
Ann Arbor.
Yep.
Yep. I lived in Ann Arbor I spent too much time in Ann Arbor, years of my life.
I lived in Ipsy for a minute.
Okay, Ipsy is not a place, but Ypsilanti is.
Ypsilanti, yes.
Yeah.
There's like car parts named after that, right?
Is there? I don't
I
know.
think so. There's a factory there where stuff was made.
And right next to Ipsy, sort of southeast of Ann Arbor, is a place that sounds very much like a place in Italy. There's a dragway. Milan.
Milan, yes.
Yeah.
Milan.
It's Milan. I'm not
Mercury.
kidding. Yeah.
Mercury Milan.
Mercury Milan. Yeah, it's Milan, but pronounced in Michigan. So Milan. Anyway, the 23rd, we're going to do a live Carmudgeon show at the Detroit Concours d'Elegance. Go to DetroitConcours.com and you can buy tickets in advance, or I think you can just show up and break in, whatever. We don't know what we're going to do there. Possibly a Q&A.
Perhaps. It could happen.
We could just key all the show cars. That'd be fun.
Ooh.
That'd be very Detroit.
Right?
Appropriate. Culturally appropriate.
I'm going to bring a 55-gallon drum, fill it with trash, and light it on fire. Because that's my favorite part of driving through Detroit in the winter is the burning oil drums of garbage.
I once went to an indoor junkyard in Detroit that was...
Indoor junkyard?
Yes. It was an old
I'm interested.
body plant that had been converted to an auto salvage operation where they used the gantry cranes to move cars around. They had them all
Wow.
stacked 4 high in the corners, and they pulled a Mercedes 400E down for me. But this was in January, and the whole place was heated with burn barrels. And so the smoke was so thick, you couldn't actually tell you were inside, and there were just flying cars. It was amazing.
Oh my God.
That's a pretty cool experience.
I mean, but was there like beautiful stained glass windows and stuff? Okay. This was just a shitty old factory building. Yeah. Downtown Detroit, like the houses are unbelievable. I mean,
the ones that are left standing.
The ones that are left standing, but there are beautiful estates that are available for nothing because there's kind of no infrastructure and no one around. But like, people say Detroit's coming back. I don't think Detroit is coming back in that you're not going to get 10 miles out from a city center of just thriving metropolis.
It's certainly much better than it was 10 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
Though. It's
That's a low
vastly
bar, though.
improved.
That is a very low bar. I mean, the thing is, there's only so many people in the Detroit metro area to support that area, that amount of geography, because it's huge. Detroit is enormous. And so it's just, it's coming back, but it's never going to be, I don't think, the way it was.
The large empty highways on the outskirts are great, though.
Yeah, that is true. They're all flat.
Yeah.
That's the worst part about living in Michigan was the roads are flat and straight.
Yeah.
Useless.
Yeah. High speed, though. Like,
Oh, yeah.
real, like, in
Except
the Bay Area.
the surface quality isn't great for
Yeah,
high
but
speed.
but in all seriousness, moving to Michigan was when I finally understood American cars, because I moved there with a bunch of high revving, annoying, short geared German pieces of shit that fell into the potholes, And I'm just, the ice cold engine in the morning, you get out on the main road and everyone's doing 70. Well, I can't go that fast because that's 4,000 RPM in these cars. So I'm just like, oh God, my oil's not up to temp yet. What am I doing? And then I realized that the American stuff was big, floaty, torquey, long-legged. And when you're on the outskirts of Detroit, everything is on a mile grid. So all you have to do is leisurely schlep yourself to 60 miles an hour, run over dead bodies and terrain, and then gradually coast to a stop or make a 90-degree turn very slowly. And so the idea of long-legged, torquey, blah, 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 V8s with 2 feet of suspension travel made so much sense. Plus, the lanes are wide. It's just a completely different place. So
Very different than here.
I hated my cars here. I hated them. Like, they all sucked. There was no pleasure to be had. And I sort of thought about becoming a big boat guy.
Yeah.
Really?
There's no point. Like, I thought, okay, a 60s car is kind of perfect for Detroit.
It really
because
is.
They're straight line cruisers. You don't really go faster than 70 around town. No, but I mean, when I say around town, I mean these grids are a 1 mile grid. So, you have 10 mile and 11 mile and whatever. They're called the mile.
Yeah.
And there's kind of nothing around. So you just kind of get up to 70 and then slow back down. And the highways, everyone does 90 and 100. But that's cool. Especially being where I am here, where everyone does like 38.
West Coast highways are really something else compared to back home.
What you will find is the further you go up the West Coast, the more, what's your term?
You lived in Seattle.
I did live in Seattle.
He experienced
Seattle
firsthand the comatose motorists.
very frustrating.
Yeah, the comatose quotient just is equivalent to the latitude. Like, fucking, by the time you get to like Marin here in the Bay Area, everyone's asleep. And then they're clinically dead by the time they get to Seattle.
In Seattle, you'll have a 5-lane highway on the 5, and it will be 5 cars across, and they will all be doing exactly 58 miles an hour, and you can't get around them. There's
in a 65 zone.
In a 65,
60.
yeah.
60.
60.
Yeah. Roving low-speed roadblock, as I call it. Okay, so to answer Derek's question, the fuck are you doing here? I get to abuse him.
Okay, enjoy.
For the past however long that you guys have been doing this, you've been saying a lot of things about Mercedes, and they're not all entirely factual. So at one point,
he's dishing it back to you.
At one point, Jason said, "I don't check my DM, so if you have anything to say it to Derek." So I have been
sending
in
corrections,
Derek's DMs with the Mercedes facts corrections for a very long time, and it just seemed appropriate to come
here and
So
deliver
you're
them in
gonna come
person,
here
so there's
and
not
torture us.
so there's not a 2-episode delay between when you say something when it goes live, then he DMs
then-
me about it, and then it gets to the next recording. So it's like a month lag. Now it's just more efficient,
More real time.
to get corrections.
Might I
in real
remind
time.
both of you, while you're busy attacking me, that the two of you have just accomplished a motor swap in my warehouse for no charge. I will not be billing you for damage you've done to the floor or any cleaning I have to do. So with that in mind, let me have it. What have I fucked up? I genuinely, I'm totally kidding. I want to hear that. Where do I start? There's so many things. Seriously, I mean, was there something like we got horribly wrong?
I mean, it's mostly just minutia over the past couple of years.
He'll remember because he
will remember. I have a terrible memory.
Good, probably better that way.
No, we'll just do it in real time. I mean, the real reason why we're here is to discuss, I think, your main focus now, which is making Mercedes-Benz better through motor swaps.
Science.
I would like to point out that the fact that Derek Tam-Scott is here talking about old Mercedes is a shock to me and all our entire audience. Everyone shocked. Okay, so you brought here today a C126 500 SEC.
Yes.
That you've put. We're just going to speak in codes from this whole time.
Yeah, it's just going to be a bunch of numbers and letters.
you've
Okay, so this
put-
is the 80s S-Class coupe for those who are not Mercedes people.
That you've swapped an M113. How does Mercedes do the displacement? B55?
5.4.
Yeah, well, we know it's a 5.4, but
Yes.
Mercedes called it a 55, right?
Only in the model.
In
yeah.
the model year?
Yep.
So what's the full code of the engine?
It's just an M113 NA.
There's no like dot something? How do they just...
Yeah. 113 981, I believe.
Because there's always a 9.8 something, 9.85, 9.83, whatever. Okay, so anyway, a 5.4 liter, 3 valve per cylinder,
Yep.
V8.
Single overhead cam.
Single overhead cam. The one that I made fun of for years. I made fun of that engine when it came out.
Until you owned one.
Well, until all of the other high-tech stuff that was coming. So for perspective, we're talking 98 for that motor family. No.
Yep.
Yes, V12 came first. So Mercedes had a 4-cam series of engines.
So those came out in 90.
89, yeah, 89 production, 90, M119. So it's 4 valve per cylinder, 4 camshafts, absolute height of technology.
Variable valve timing on the intake.
Yeah. And then cost cut the shit out of all those motors for the next family, going from 4 cams to 2 cams, getting rid of variable valve timing, going from 4 valve to 3 valve per cylinder, and needing twin plugs on the engine to get it to pass emissions.
Yes.
This was straight cost cutting, and I thought that was just
the Daimler Chrysler era.
Yeah. Then you drive one of these V8s.
Right.
Or live with one. Nothing
maintain
breaks,
one.
Never.
And they're wonderful.
Crank position sensor.
Keep a crank position sensor in your glove box and you're fine.
And that's it. Yeah.
They're indestructible, good power for the cost.
And so
they are basically free, which is central to your plan here.
The naturally aspirated ones are basically free, yes, but the supercharged ones, not so much.
Okay, so they came in. So the M119, which was the first family of V8s, so the 4-cam, came in 4.2 liter form and 5 liter form.
Yes,
and 6 liter from AMG.
Okay. Fair enough. And then the one that replaced it got a small displacement bump to make up for the lack of cams and power. So the 4.2 went to a 4.3. So if you've ever seen a 430 badged Mercedes, it's that engine. A 43 badged AMG is the AMG version of that engine. And then there was a 500, which was a 5.0, right? Mm-hmm. And then a 55, which is the AMG version. That's a 5.4.
Yep.
That 5.4 came naturally aspirated or supercharged.
As of 2003.
Okay. Yeah. And so you put a naturally aspirated 5.4 liter, 3 valve per cylinder V8 into that poor, unsuspecting C126.
Oh, yes.
And you have put supercharged ones in other 126s as well?
Yes. I've actually done more of the supercharged ones than the naturally aspirated ones at this point.
It seems a little bit nuts.
Yeah, it is.
We like things that are a little bit nuts, which is why you're here, frankly. Okay, so let's talk about horsepower. So a 500 SEC was not a slow car.
It was
by the era.
By the era, right?
Compared to anything now, it was very slow. But yes, at the time, it was rather potent.
It's a 140 mile an hour car.
Right. 8 seconds to 60, probably somewhere in there. I mean, the 560 motor, which was the same sort of family, was a US only torquey motor, and they were 227 horsepower, whatever.
In the US, it was, I think, 228, and then in Euro trim, if you got the high compression and the good exhaust, it was 300 horsepower.
That was a shit ton of power.
For the day, yeah.
Yeah, more than a 6.9.
Yeah, true. All right, so this is now 300. The factory 55 naturally aspirated engines were 380,
350,
345 to 367 based on year and trim.
Okay, and so you have a 300 and something. Well, you tuned it, right?
Yes,
so it's
it is tuned to 400 on this car.
Okay, so it's a 400 horsepower car. What the SEC came out in 1980 ish. What had 400 horsepower in 1980?
Nothing. It was before the 288. It was before the Countach did not crest 400 until the Quattro Valvoline came out in 85. Mm-hmm. The Testarossa was 380 horsepower in 84. Nothing had 400 horsepower then. Porsche turbos were in the high 200s, low 300s.
If you actually went to AMG and had them build you the 6-liter quad cam M117, you were still only at 380, 390.
Wow.
Yeah.
So this, if you think about it, you've now made what would have been the most powerful car of its era.
Yes.
With what transmissions in it?
The .6, 722.6.
This is the transmission that came with the engine out of the donor car, which was a S55.
2002 S55 AMG.
So that's the last year of the naturally aspirated S55.
Okay.
You experienced it?
I experienced it. You experienced it.
I also experienced it, yeah.
It has a limited slip, doesn't it?
It does. Yeah, it has a quaif.
It explodes sideways quite lovely. I didn't expect it to do a first gear downshift. So, those transmissions in the old Mercedes were a little bit lazy. And so you could mat 3/4 of the throttle and it would never give you a wide open throttle downshift until you click there was an electric button at the bottom that was the downshift.
Kick down switch.
And I did not get to the floor, and it very eagerly gave me first gear, which gave me a lot of wheel spin and sidewaysness. And had there not been a Mercury Comet on the side of the road that we were aimed towards whilst sideways, I would have done a massive drift, but I don't like totaling other people's cars. My God, that thing's fast.
It's good fun.
And that's with the automatic and naturally aspirated. Imagine with a manual swap and a pair of single supercharger.
That car compared to the other one that I built in January, which is that configuration, the manual transmission and the supercharger, that car is properly insane. It wants to kill you.
Okay, that sounds like fun.
Oh yeah.
I mean, this thing doesn't want to kill you. I mean,
I think it puts power down very well. You're not going to go sideways in this car unless you mean to. Whereas I suspect in the supercharged car, you're going to go sideways whether you want to or not.
Yep. Yeah. Accurate.
Yeah, and then he's put it in a 123 as well.
Oh yeah, the 123 is really the crown jewel of the collection because it's a one-of-one wide body 123, all steel. I don't even know who did it. It was done in the 90s in Mexico, I think. But
that's good provenance.
Yeah, that one. So that's the 113K with the 6-speed manual and no anti-squat suspension on that. So it does have a quaif, and it's making round about 600 horse.
Holy shit!
It's just looking for a fight all the time.
I mean, 600 horsepower on a car so in the U.S. the 123 was mostly sold as a 240D, which had
the 300D,
which had 64 horsepower
65.
And then the 300D turbo. 300D and then 300D turbo.
Yes, then the 300D is 95 horsepower, and the turbo is like 115 to 120, or depending on whether it's a California car.
4 times the most amount of horsepower you could get in that car in the U.S.
That's right, and the most powerful one that was ever made, 123, was the high compression 6-cylinder engine, which was 185 horsepower, the 280E. So the most power Mercedes ever conceived of putting in that car was 185 horsepower.
So, what breaks? What goes first?
The tires.
But like nothing on the chassis is no problem dealing with it?
No. So I've upgraded the diff, I've upgraded the axles, I've upgraded the drive shaft, I've upgraded the suspension and the brakes and literally everything.
But it's all Mercedes stuff with the exception of the diff, right?
It is all factory Mercedes, everything.
From other models.
From other models. It all bolts in, and I just added a quaif to the diff, and it's fantastic. But I have a different theory on horsepower than most people, whereas most people want to put the biggest tires they can on a car. I don't do that, right? Because when you do that, you're moving the fuse somewhere else. There's always a fuse in your drivetrain. Right. So if you put skinny tires on it, the tires are the fuse.
Right.
Therefore, you just spin the tires and have a lot of fun.
Yeah. Rather than shattering drive shafts, axles, diffs, everything else. Yeah.
Right.
I like the philosophy also of the sort of fully Mercedes. I mean, there's a temptation to LS swap things, but that's always not really sat quite right with me. And so I like the sort of accessing the parts bin to build the right kind of car that still is all Mercedes stuff. And you know, I'm constantly shocked when I talk to him because he's like, yeah, so if you pull the axles from a 560 SL, then they're exactly the right width to fit with this setup in that car. And you're just like, my God. This is the kind of stuff where it's like if you sent to a fab shop, they'd just be like, we're going to make some custom stuff, and here's a bill for 25 grand just for a pair of custom driveline shit. So I like this approach better because it's cheap and it's OEM.
And yeah, anything that Mercedes has made is going to be much higher quality than anything you can get in the aftermarket or custom because it's been tested and stress tested for decades by Mercedes engineers versus some guy in a shed.
So, for example, a wiring harness for an M104 that is made in someone's shed would not be more reliable than the one that Mercedes made that disintegrates on its own and just turns into dust after 10 years?
That's a special case.
I'm just kidding.
It was only for 3 model years.
Yeah. And it was the intent was to make the car recyclable.
Yes.
It was the same problem that BMW had with the E36 interior. We'll make it recyclable. It will self-recycle.
Yes. While you're driving it.
While you're driving.
Right. So the 126 was to your satisfaction? You found it amusing?
Yeah, I found it really. So what I love most about it is that it's a 6-cylinder tack in the car. So it starts and it's sitting there, blah, 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 and it's showing 1,200 RPM. And I'm like, that is not 1,200 RPM. That is a 6-cylinder tack. And then you start to accelerate and it just quickly pegs at 7,000 and stays there for very long periods of time. I took a video. And it just is hilarious watching. I mean, okay, Would I fix it? Maybe.
I'm going to. Yeah.
I just kind of love the idea of like a fully pegged tack, and it barely moves off the peg on a shift.
Well, it solves your problem of not liking cars where you can't ever get to red line.
Yeah, this is like off the tack scale. No, it honestly drives like a real car. Like the funny thing is that M113 is torquey in the same way that the original 500 motor was for those cars, on the 560s. They were kind of torqued down low and then would run out of breath a little bit. This is all that torque down low, but then they don't run out of breath nearly as much. So it really feels like a Mercedes. It feels like, a 126 SEC that just is a lot faster.
That's kind of my philosophy for building these cars. Is I really like the way that all of the old Mercedes drive. They have all their idiosyncrasies that are just so charming. But wouldn't it be great if you could have that, but also have a proper amount of power and use it every day? So that's what I do.
Yeah. Modern fuel injection. I mean, forgetting about the power, the fact that you can, first of all, you can flick the key on that car, which is so cool. You don't have to hold it to crank. Flick the key and it will just start, idle, run, not have to deal with any CIS bullshit is
and for no maintenance cost, no ongoing maintenance cost, because those things are so easy to live with. Yeah, to me, the car strikes me as very coherent. It feels like a logical extension of what the car originally was, and it doesn't feel modified. Cars that feel really modified, this is the reason why you hated my Alpha GTV6, because it felt modified, and you end up with something that's sort of incoherent. And
I mean, that car is just dangerous. So look, I like modding cars. I've modified most of my cars,
but not willy-nilly. It has to have a coherent sort of...
It has to be fucking drivable. Your GTV, you got to, in all seriousness, I am not a weak person. I have like now dad strength. I couldn't fucking turn the wheel on this car. It literally, like at 60 miles an hour on a back road, you're approaching max light. Look at the size of his arms and the veins. Most of that came from that fucking Alpha. It was, in all seriousness, it was dangerous to drive very quickly because, of course, I could get the car to turn, but I would never be able to get the car to turn quickly enough to react to it stepping out or anything. It was dangerous. That car sucked. Sorry.
What made the steering so heavy?
Too much caster. I removed it. We reduced it by about 50%. I don't think you ever drove it after that, but the car was much more drivable after it was just reducing the caster.
Out of curiosity, how much caster was there?
5 or 6 degrees. Is that reasonable?
I don't know. I have no idea. Too much. What it was. There were a bunch of issues with that car. That was also that engine, the way it was set up, made nothing until 4,000 RPM, and it was over at 5,500. So you had a very tiny power band, and I'll never forget the 2 to 3 shift, because if you shifted at 6,000 RPM from second to third, which happened at 141 miles an hour, I mean, it was very long-legged, you would shift, and it would go from 6,000 to 2,000, and there was nobody home, and you couldn't pass anyone, and you were stuck behind that fucking truck on a back road and working out. It was just, I hated everything about that car. Which is
they needed a shorter rear end ratio for sure. The factory actually changed it in response to this. Was an early car and had a 346 rear end, and I think the later ones were 411s or something like that. I mean, a substantial change to rear axle ratio to solve exactly that problem.
Let me say it, like a late GTV6 is magic to drive. Yours was just modified in a way that I didn't appreciate. So
Derek and I were talking though, because I am also an Alpha person, that Alpha hobby is almost a completely different hobby than the Mercedes hobby.
Tell me why.
Oh, it's just when you work on a Mercedes, everything
works.
It works. It's very satisfying because you put things together and you take something apart, it goes back together the way you would expect it to. Whereas on an Alpha, I think Derek was saying you take it apart and it doesn't go back together.
Yeah.
You can't think of it the same way because it's entirely different.
Yeah, I mean, a Mercedes, you take it apart and you throw something. I mean, this is always the test. If you're reassembling like the firewall or plastic trim, there's always a click that makes you aware that you have indeed reinstalled everything correctly, and it all goes back together very nicely. And in an Alfa Romeo, it's just like super casual about the whole thing, including proceeding down the road. Anything related to an Alfa Romeo is very casual.
It's probably just that the Alpha stuff is 20 years older than the Mercedes stuff that we're working with.
But you work on 111s.
Yeah, so I work on 111s and 108s, 60s, 70s Mercedes. And in the same day, I'll be working on my 71 Berlina or my GTV, and it's just a whole different animal.
Okay, because what I was going to say is most of the stuff that we've talked about is 20 years apart. And then in actuality. And then philosophically, the Italian market was like, the Italian, car industry was 20 years behind Mercedes, behind the Germans anyway. Yeah. So you really have a 40-year gulf from handmade to the engineering of something that is meant to be put together. I mean, there's a lot of time that car companies spend in engineering things properly so that things fit together positively and so they can be built quickly and stay reliable. The Italians never really got that.
No, I mean, there was a tendency, there was a desire to just, I would say, turn them out, I guess. And, it's reflected. People always talk about how poor the rust resistance is of Italian cars from the 70s, and they were just buying steel from the cheapest place, which happened to be the Soviet Union. Mm-hmm. And so they had a lot of low quality materials going in, and there was a lot of industrial unrest. I mean, of all the Western European countries, Italy was the closest to having a communist revolution. There's a lot of, the prime minister at one point in I think the late 70s was assassinated in the street. I mean, it was a very frequent strikes, frequent unrest. It was just not a great environment in which to be building cars. In Britain, there were a lot of labor disputes also, so there were a lot of strikes as well. So the quality, of course, suffered there as well. It was just
let's not forget that Italy's climate isn't really all that harsh. So something like rust prevention isn't going to be a top priority versus like Detroit.
And strong domestic market favoring also. I remember when during that era, if you lived in France, you bought a French car. If you lived in Italy, you bought an Italian car. And so there was an element of it's a foreigner buying the car.
That still happens. Look at Lancia's sales volume in Italy versus the rest of the world. I mean, I don't think
it's too far.
Fiat. Buy them.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they probably don't even sell them in other markets anymore.
Yeah. But you can see, very clearly, the Italians still favor the Italian market.
So the answer to the question I was asking before, which is why is Matt here, was to swap the engine in my wagon.
That was Derek's selfish reason why Matt is here. Okay, so have at it. What happened?
How long was it? 48 hours and 15 minutes between the last key off of the 3.2 liter engine and the first key on of the 3.6 liter engine.
Yep. You measured this?
I mean, we started at 6:30 p.m. on Sunday, and the first time we started the car was Tuesday evening at 6:45.
Okay. So back up and tell everyone, what did you do and why
he
did
you do it? I didn't do anything.
Well, okay. What did yous do?
You all.
What do you say in Michigan for plural you? You's in New York, yins in Pittsburgh, y'all in the South, and what?
Oh, I don't know. I've always said y'all.
You say y'all?
Yep.
You live in the South now.
I know. I just moved to where it's appropriate.
I found my linguistic home somewhere where I can. Okay. So back up.
The car comes with a 3.2 liter.
What car? The audience doesn't know what station wagon you've done.
The purple station wagon.
The best W124 wagon. Sorry, S124. And it was initially a 3.2 dogleg purple slick top Sportline wagon in immaculate condition. And it was only missing one thing, and that one thing was a hot engine. So we fixed that.
But it had the hot engine.
It had the hottest engine you could get from the factory.
Yes.
Okay. So 124 wagons, let's back up. This is a Euro car.
It is.
In the US, they were available with 2 engines?
3. In 87, you could get a diesel. Diesel only in 87.
I own one of those.
But it's not a diesel. It is a diesel again now. But you're on your 4th engine in that car?
Oh, only second one in this car.
Got
3
it.
in the last one.
So you could get initially as a diesel in 87.
Right.
A turbo diesel, that's a 6-cylinder?
OM603, yep.
Okay.
Was it 2.5 liter or was it
3 liter?
3 liter.
3 liter. Wasn't it you couldn't get
there was a 2.5 later, but it was not available. Yes, but not available in the wagon.
Okay.
And then in 88 to 92, for the rear wheel drive cars, there was the 103 M103, which is a single overhead cam 3 liter inline 6, 177 horsepower.
That much
for US trim?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm thinking of the 2.5. Never mind.
And then from 93 onward, then you got the twin cam with 24 valve engine, which is 217 horsepower for the US market.
And this
93,
was
94, 95.
the 6-cylinder version of the 4-cam V8 and the 4-cam V12, right? So what Mercedes did was, what car companies do, people often forget, is they engineer one combustion chamber. So they decide valve locations, whatever, and then it's just Control C, Control V, whatever layout you want. So there was a family of V12. Half of that V12 would be a straight 6, and 3/4 of that V12
the
cut
V12
the other way.
was 2 of the 6s because the 6 existed first.
Blah, blah, blah. Same thing. Yeah, no, same idea, right? So the combustion chambers are the same. This is the highest technology engine Mercedes made at the time, right? Yeah. So this was variable valve timing, 4 valve per cylinder, twin cam. That was serious shit.
Variable intake runner. Made a big
variable
difference.
right. So early on there was a 3-liter. So it came with, we've talked a lot about the dogleg SL 129 SL that had a 3-liter version of this M104 engine that revved to 7,000. They then
8,000.
Huh?
8,000.
From the factory revved to 7,000.
You can make them go to 9.
Really?
Yes, without much trouble.
Oh my God. Only Mercedes.
See, this is
I love
why
this.
he's
I
an
love it.
incredible resource.
But
Because
the
of-
red line, the rev limiter was 7,000, 7,200, something like that.
So what's really interesting is that engine was actually, they took the 190 2.316 Cosworth engine and extended it 2 cylinders because they wanted a bigger engine to go racing with. So they made the 3.0 24. And that's why originally the first 3 years of that engine, 90 to 92, you could get them, well, they all came with all forged internals, double valve springs, 8,000 RPM redline, and all that was because it was basically a racing engine that they decided to sell to the public.
Hold on. So M104 was designed off of the Cosworth M102?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Even though it has variable valve timing and all the rest of the stuff? I didn't realize. So they took Cosworth. So for the 2316, Cosworth did that head. That was just a standard 45-degree V valve angle, blah, 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 Cosworth head. So interesting. I did not know the M104
That's
was
where the
inspired.
lineage is from. Yes, it was all inspired from that Cosworth head.
Huh. Really cool.
Because the first time Mercedes tried to do a twin cam 6, that didn't go so well. That's the M110, 2.7 liter.
280 engine, right?
Yeah, which is
Worst engine they ever
2.7.
made.
Really? Worse than a 230 motor? The Mercedes 4-cylinders and I have never been friends. Other than the original M102, the rest of them, I think they were just clattery and diesel-y and horrible.
I once got an M110 in a Euro 280 SL that had a rod knock when I got it at 47,000 miles. So I figured, it's pretty low mileage. Hopefully I can drop the pan, throw some new bearings, and it'll be okay. I dropped the pan. It had already been rebuilt. The crank had already been ground, and it already had oversized bearings at 47,000 miles and needed them again.
Yikes. I mean, those engines were notorious for smoking. You know, you'd always used a lot of oil
And leaking.
and so yes,
And
that one
generally
probably
failing.
leaked out and or burned all of its oil and destroyed.
It also had a 2-piece cylinder head, which was impossible to get to seal correctly.
God. Okay, so
I own a car with this engine in it. I'm just sitting.
You
I mean,
better keep
I guess
them.
when it explodes,
You're
then
gonna have
we're-
to get him
we're-
to swap
Yeah,
something
we're
else in.
gonna put
Okay.
something in it, I guess. Well,
okay.
Anyway.
So the U.S. cars got the U.S. 124 wagons got that M103 which was a single cam or the M104 which is a twin cam. The M104 they got was a 3.2 liter, not the 3-liter original one. That added a variable intake runner, and that was done for low end torque or low and mid range torque. 200 and what horsepower? 220, 217. It's always 220 PS in Germany that rounds down to 217 horsepower, and fucking annoying. And yours came with the dogleg 5-speed manual.
yes, all the manual ones, which were not available here. I mean, anytime that engine was ever paired with a manual in 3 or 3.2 liter form, it was always a dogleg.
So S class got a dogleg
The
manual.
S-Class
which
got a
is-
dogleg, yes. The SL got a dogleg. The E-Class
Yeah,
got a
super cool.
dogleg.
So the racing engine for the racing gearbox for the racing old man.
S-Class.
Yes, for the racing S class. And then so your wagon has an ASD in it, right? Which
This
you
is
need to
a
explain.
locking differential, but it's hydraulically locking.
It has a small amount of lock all the time, and then when it senses slip, it will just lock itself up.
100% lock.
Yep.
Yeah.
Hydraulically.
Hydraulically, which is not what you as a driver want, even if you think you want it. I had a 190E 2.0 with an ASD years ago. And so the light, when it's sensing slip and it's about to lock, you get a light on the dash. And it's about a half a second before you would notice it locking. And that light meant counter steer. Like, fucking get on it, Jason. Because I'd be driving it, like, I had my dad in the car once, leave a toll booth. And this is back in PA. There's this like long right hand 120-degree turn that would get onto the freeway. And I knew in that car, if I floored it out of the toll booth, which was, throw a quarter in, so you had to stop, I could just make the end of the on-ramp sideways, just a little bit sideways, and slide right onto the highway
throttle.
like it was nothing at full throttle. So I knew the car could do it. And it was a little bit cold outside. And my dad's in the car. I'm like, yeah, watch this. Famous last words. And I floor it. And just as the road crown changed from the on-ramp to the highway, light came on, and I'm like, shit. And at that point, you don't want to lift. Those cars have significant lift throttle oversteer.
Yeah.
So I just kept my foot in and went half a turn of lock right as it's locking. Yeah, a locking diff is great for drifting. It is not great for smooth at the limit behavior because it throws the car fucking sideways.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so you have the sidewaysy diff, dog leg, slick top, sport seats, sport line, everything, different steering box, different suspension, self-leveling at the rear. That is in purple.
Yes, we put new accumulators on it, which it desperately needed.
Okay. So for the record, I know we've talked about this. This is the hottest 80s Mercedes you could buy, 90s, I guess, Mercedes, period, with the possible exception of an Evo 2 Cosworth. Are we agreed on that?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, the C36 wasn't there yet, and that's kind of an AMG product. I guess
Just coolest now, though. I mean,
yes.
If you think if I have to buy something
you would
from
want it as a
1994,
sedan if it was going to be dynamically better than the wagon.
Yeah, but
Weighs
it's
a little
not
bit
cooler.
less. No, it's not cooler.
The idea of a dog-leg manual wagon with rear drive and a diff.
Yeah, we discussed this, and maybe the only people who ever put a dog leg in a station wagon other than Mercedes was Datsun in the 510. Yeah.
And 510 wagon is cooler than a 510 sedan. Just
Yep.
sorry, these are not my rules.
No.
Sorry.
These are facts of the universe.
Facts.
It's basically physics.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so you had already the fastest, hottest version of the coolest fucking car from 1994 you could possibly buy, and now you ruined it.
It was his idea. He was like, you can just throw in a 3.6 in there and it'll go right in with no effort.
You do realize you were responsible for this, for creating an even bigger monster.
I mean, absolutely. Unequivocally. He's like, I have one. You can buy it from me. It's cheap.
Freshly rebuilt.
So freshly rebuilt. So this is the C36. For people who don't speak in M104.982 terms or whatever.
This is a .941.
Shit. I just made up 92.
See, real time correction.
Yeah, that was
Oh,
bullshit.
fun fact. The
no.
.941 is the same engine code as the C280 engine because AMG took the C280s off the line, drove them down to a Falterbach, and then bored and stroked the 2.8 liter. They didn't start with the 3.2.
Correct. So this was they were C280 Sports to build the C36 AMG. The C43 AMG, and you can correct me if I'm wrong because I know you is the first AMG product ever built on a Mercedes production line.
Yes.
So AMG did the car, sort of figured out what it needs, and gave the parts to Mercedes, and Mercedes was built. So the C36 had a 3.6 liter. Was it bored and stroked?
Yes.
Bored and stroked version of the 3.2 liter. Hold on,
2.8.
I'm sorry, 2.8. They bored and why didn't they just? How the hell you take an engine that's already complete, you pull it apart, and you rebore it?
Yep. And then you throw a diesel crank in it.
That was literally what they did?
Yeah, that was the 3.5 OM603 diesel crank, which they had
it's going to be strong enough.
They actually had to modify the crankshaft to clear the piston skirts because of the
Whatever the fuck.
Right.
Blah, 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 blah. That's insane.
Because there were bigger pistons.
Think of the man hours required to. I mean, they're literally shipping.
This is why this car was like $55,000 when it came out.
Okay.
I had a C36 and the guy bought it new and he traded a Porsche 964 Carrera 2 in when he bought the C36 plus $25,000. And now the 964 is worth, $125,000 and the C36 is worth 18, 20.
And they're going up.
They are going up. I mean, I sold it for $18,500 and it had 33,000 miles on it.
Beautiful car.
Yeah, and it was an unusual color. It was red.
I've never driven a C36, but I don't love the idea of it because I want that engine. A straight six should have a manual.
Absolutely. I actually put about 800 miles on one last summer, and the transmission was by far the most disappointing part of the car.
Was it a 4 or 5 speed?
It was a 5-speed. It was a
because the 97s were 5 speeds and the 95 and 96s were 4-speed automatics.
But
you routinely, will just be like, this is the transmission you put in to make it be a manual, right? You just put a 6-speed in from a
Chrysler
W202
C230.
C230.
203.
2002 specifically, that's a strong one.
Okay. But so does the transmission bother you on a C43? So the C36 was replaced by C43, which is a 4.3 liter V8 with the single cams and also had that 5-speed automatic. Does that bother you?
So what's funny is the only C43 I've owned, I bought it with a blown up engine. So what I immediately did was rip out the drivetrain and put in a 5.4 and 6-speed. So I never experienced the C43 with an automatic transmission.
You're kidding. You didn't drive his?
I didn't.
You should.
Just briefly.
So it's very interesting to me because that I'm a manual lunatic. That automatic didn't bother me in that car. And I didn't long for a manual with that V8.
Yeah, no, that's like with the 126 I'm driving right now. First off, I used to hate 126s, and also I'm also a manual transmission purist. All of my Mercedes have manual transmissions, but I put 1,000 miles on that thing in the past week, and honestly, it's really good.
Yeah. That V8, that whole family, Mercedes V8s made up to automatics really well. And you put a manual on them and they have very heavy flywheels and they have a lot of counterweight. They're not the most, V8s, crossplane V8s are just not the most blippy engines in the world. And they work really well with automatics.
I'll have to put you in my 108 sometime. I have a 1970 W108 that was a factory stick shift car. So when I put the S55 motor in it, it kept the stick shift. It's 6-speed, not a 4-speed anymore, but it
still works.
Oh,
I mean, listen, you can modify it, but out of the factory, Mercedes are all, even the 2316, the Cosworth motor is very heavy flywheel.
That's part of why it's smooth, I imagine.
Right. It's 14 kilogram flywheel in the Cosworth, which is
insane.
30 pounds.
Way lighter than any of the other manual 5-speed cars.
Only because it's a 4-cylinder.
Right.
But like
not the Cosworth also has a lightened flywheel compared to the other 4-cylinders.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Yeah. Really?
Yeah.
So the light flywheel is 30 pounds.
Yes.
The factory flywheel in my Volkswagens, which are 2 liters, is 14 pounds. So 1 over 2.2 the weight.
I actually just put a 14-pound aluminum flywheel in my 16 valve, and wow, did that make a difference?
Yeah. I had an 8-pound flywheel in the Volkswagens for a while, and they would rattle themselves. Like I literally cracked the block from it. Cams and a flywheel. Anyway, okay. So how the fuck do we get on that? Whatever. Your wagon. So you put a C36 AMG engine in your E320 wagon.
That's right. So it's the same engine family. It's, it fits the same. It looks exactly the same now because we put the old valve cover and intake on it for the moment. So yeah, it looks exactly the same. 48 hours of like open heart surgery and the result looks exactly the same.
Exactly the same, yeah.
But that's kind of the beauty of that to me is that, if I were to try and smog it or do anything, it's a very sanitary factory looking installation. But yeah, it has 50 more horsepower.
That's a big jump. And how much more torque?
I don't know. That's a good question.
I don't know that one.
Oh my God. I'm going to make up a number so you can correct me once this episode goes live in the comments. The original 320 probably had 195 pound-feet of torque.
I bet it was a little more.
The torque and horsepower numbers are very close on most of those engines, yeah.
That's right. It was the VVT engines that had more. Okay, whatever it is. But anyway, you went from 3.2 to 3.6, which is a 400cc displacement pump. And
it's fantastic. It feels it feels the same most of the time, and the characters of the car is intact. And this is the thing I like about modified cars, where you don't go wacko. When you have a car that's totally undrivable because of how modified it is, it's really like, it's very compromised. And this doesn't. It feels all factory. This is a nice thing about doing factory stuff in these cars. And then, of course, periodically you'll do something where you're like, wow, that would not have been possible in the past.
We should have done it before and after it. I know.
I wanted to. We just didn't have time.
But yeah, sorry. So it's 280 something horse now.
Yeah, it's around 280 horsepower. Maybe a little less because it has the smaller intake on it. But once I get the valve cover refinished, then we'll put the big intake on it, and then maybe do some stuff with the ECU. But yeah, it's much more muscular, but the character is intact, and it's just a pleasant Mercedes product to use. It doesn't make it an unusable, terrible experience, which is often what happens when you heavily modify a car, especially with an engine swap.
Is the engine, the 3.6, any harsher or any less smooth than the 3.2 was?
I need more time with it. I've driven it probably 20 miles now,
wow.
25 miles. I need more time to tell, but it feels more alike than unlike it did before. And recall this is a factory Mercedes-Benz product, so the levels of refinement are going to be
the 3.6
high.
wasn't a factory Mercedes project.
They sold it through Mercedes dealers to Mercedes-Benz customers who didn't sort of know the intricacies of who built it or where, and assumed that it had a Mercedes warranty on it. Exactly. So it's like the ultimate, while still maintaining the character of the car. I think it will. Maybe it needs an exhaust. Maybe it doesn't.
It does.
It does because of flow or for noise.
Both.
What do they sound like? I don't think I've ever heard a really opened up.
It's like an S52, like a BMW S52.
I used to have a wagon with that engine in it with a 6-speed manual, and there was one time I was driving through Seattle, and the muffler got caught because it was very low and ripped off, and I then proceeded to go directly through a tunnel, and the sound was glorious, and I have a video of it. So.
Okay.
Maybe we can include it as an insert.
Yeah.
To me, these engines sound a lot like BMW S52s.
That's my problem. That's the reason I asked you for that, because if it sounds too much like a BMW M50 or whatever, I just don't. I think you should put a big cone air intake on it and get all kinds of glorious intake noise. But then
it already makes quite a bit of intake noise.
Does it?
Yeah.
If we were to do an exhaust on that, we would do a tasteful exhaust, not necessarily a loud exhaust, just to give it some more flow.
Okay. Fair
Functional.
enough. I'm very curious. So the engine's brand new, so you're breaking it in. I'm very curious to see what you have to say when it's got 1,000 miles on it and you beat the shit out of it.
Yeah. I'm really excited to do that. It's too early to say because I literally drove it home at midnight after we finished the swap, and then I haven't driven it since then. So, yeah, it needs more break-in time, but it is appreciably snappier. I mean, the torque and the throttle response actually seems better as well. I think it's just that for every movement, every degree of throttle you have more torque, so it just feels a lot more eager. So,
what's your break-in procedure going to be?
I don't know. You tell me. You built it.
Generally, when I build an engine, I just drive it.
Like
it normally.
redline it right day one?
I mean, you know what they say, red line a day keeps the check engine light away.
Do they say that?
He says it.
Okay, I'm going to say it now. I don't have check engine lights on most of my cars.
Me neither. But it's healthy, right? It's what keeps the engine happy. You got to drive it. Yeah. Drive it as you normally would. Maybe don't go quite full tilt on it until you get the break-in oil out of it. But
in terms of throttle application or RPM?
Both. Just, take it.
Variation.
So I gave him a little bit
85%.
I gave him a little bit of a different advice. I told him, get it nice and warm. Now that it's got like 25 miles on it or so, get to about 40, 50, make sure everything's all right, and then go climb Mount Tamalpais, which is one of the mountains over here. Do it at night so there's no one around, and just matted foot on the floor, and then full vacuum. So, full overrun over and over and over again. Don't really go over 5,500 or 6,000. Where's it redline at?
It's marked at 64.
64. So I probably just wouldn't go over 5,500 or so. And then start briefly adding high RPM. But
I would change the oil first because it still has all the break-in or the assembly lube in it.
Yeah, that for sure. So but I would change the oil at 50 miles. That's how I've done it. So just because you never know what the hell the machine shop left in there, and you can kill the engine really quickly. So I'd look at it really, closely, but probably just dump it out at 50 miles and then go beat the shit out of it.
Head needs retorquing?
Nope.
Okay. That's easy.
That's stretch bolts.
Okay.
Yeah,
there's that.
You should just go beat the shit out of this.
So the ultimate hot rod wagon. There's a few things left to do. I would like it to be slightly louder, but not too loud. Mm-hmm. And if it's going to flow better, then I'm definitely interested in doing that. And then the question, I guess, is does it need to be badged at all? It's a factory badged elite car. Mm. What is the appropriate badge to put on this car?
Technically, it would be E36,
which was a car that was available though. AMG made E36 and they all have body kits on them and stuff. Yeah.
But then the problem is you put E36 on a Mercedes and people are like, well, it's a BMW code.
How about E360?
I would just leave it debadged, honestly.
I mean, that is the factory. It is a factory debadged car.
Yeah, I'd leave it debadged, but then do something on the license plate.
It was interesting.
Like slow wagon.
It was interesting at Radwood when I had that car because everyone would walk around, they would see that it was a manual and be intrigued, and they walk around to the back looking expectantly. This is the same thing that happens with the Dino, right? People don't know what it is. It's not a familiar shape, and so they walk to the front of the car. If it's like a person in a crosswalk and you're stopped at the light when they're crossing in front of you.
You always see them look down.
You see them look down at the badge to see, what does it say? And then on that car it says Dino, and so then the confusion never clears on their face. Whereas if it were badged as a Ferrari or something, that you would see that sort of moment of comprehension, but that they never get that, which is an amusing experience when you own that car because people are puzzled by it and they're like, is that a Lotus Esprit or a DeLorean or whatever the fuck people think it is?
You know what happens is I see them behind me at red lights and they're, you always see people behind you poking the driver and the other passenger like, what is that? And whatever. And you can kind of read their lips and then they look down and I don't know. And I have a Ferrari license plate frame on it.
Ferrari of San Francisco. It's the dealer when it was still in San Francisco. Yeah. It's not just like a douche Ferrari license plate frame.
Correct.
To clarify.
Okay. It's yours technically on loan.
Permanent loan until I buy such time that I buy.
No, that wasn't the deal.
Back.
Okay, yeah. So it's as long as I own that car, that license plate frame stays with it. Yeah. If you ever buy that car back, good luck. Not going to happen. Sorry.
How's your blood pressure?
Yeah, but you can watch them scanning the back of the car, trying to figure out what the fuck it is, and then reading Like you just see them mouth Ferrari, and that's when they figured out. But
So-
the Lotus does that, and so anyway,
Same thing happened with the Wagon at Radwood because it's not badged, and people are like, "What engine is in this car?" Or like they're just looking for comprehension about the powertrain because it's weird to see a manual in a Mercedes, especially a station wagon one.
So you're gonna do a custom plate? Because you could do like displaced.
No.
That'd be funny.
No.
Or come on, like stanced, displaced. You could do like dog wagon. It'd be really cute if you had dogs.
That's true. It's true. I don't know. I'm not much of a vanity plate person.
I know.
I
But
never.
it's an opportunity for comedy.
Yes.
Like that's the way
Never
it's-
to be missed by one Jason Cammisa.
Not true. 8 cars of mine have historical vehicle plates. I had to get rid of the Figlio plate that I had on the Ferrari, which is amazing because Dino was Ferrari's son, and Figlio in Italian means son. So that was the plate I got. Son, S-O-N. That was wonderful. I had to get rid of it because I wanted historical plates. I only have 2.
There's some
This one, I hate everyone on the Lotus. And then
Stonad.
Stonad on the...
Don't forget the van. That hasn't arrived yet.
I ordered that plate in November. They cashed the check in December. It is now the end of August, and the fucking plate hasn't arrived yet.
Maybe they decided it was too offensive to actually
No,
send
they
it to
approved
you.
it.
Yes, but maybe they had a change of heart when they read what it said. Have we
Or-
talked about what the plate says?
I hope not. Or it's just the California Department of Motor Vehicles is completely dysfunctional, and therefore they can't. They told me that they were running about 8 months behind, so it should any day now. The license plate for my van makes a lot of sense. It is my daughter's name.
Do you have any kids, Jason?
No.
Okay. Carry on.
Her name is Gina, named after Regina, the city in Saskatchewan.
So you have your Vangina.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Anyway,
Well,
totally
come on,
makes sense.
step into the Vangina.
Listen, it is a baby hauling van, and my daughter, shut up, that I don't have. I have very definitely. I cannot fucking wait to see this Gina plate on the back of this van. I mean, I'm just going to laugh endlessly. And I know that everyone on the road will be pointing and laughing, and it's just such an amazing moment for comedy. And I fucking 8 months. It's been 8 months. I'm so fucking pissed.
Well, I look forward to seeing that.
We've kept this under wraps until you just ratted me out.
I didn't. I left you an out to not disclose.
Yeah, but you can't like cock tease the audience like that.
Okay.
Or
So sorry.
Vangina tease the audience.
Vangina tease the audience. Yeah.
It's going to be amazing. Jynah. Right?
Okay.
Some people might think I'm a fan of Trump's pronunciation of China because that was similar to that. I don't care what they think, but I'm going to laugh every time I look. And let's be honest. If you have to purchase a minivan, you need comedy in your life.
I mean, the whole thing is sort of comedic.
What,
That you have a
my
van?
hot Vangina? My Vangina with 18-inch blacked out wheels, tint, and
Michelin's.
sticky Michelins. The van has the same all-season fours as your white 126 does.
Yep.
They're good tires. Very good tires.
It was the first time we've ever had to call the camera car and say, slow down filming, because most of the picture cars couldn't keep up. This was when we did Bull Market last year, but the the picture cars couldn't keep up with the camera van. And the guys in the van were all getting sick because Michelin's, they generate like 400 G's of skid pad grip and silently. And so we're not listening to you. Previously we had a Telluride, which also had Michelin's on it, but they were like all season Michelin's. And so
the
there were
non-sporty
times,
all seasons.
yeah, that we had to cut all the audio out because all you hear is as the Telluride's going around the racetrack. Anyway.
Yeah.
My Vangina has 283 horsepower. My Vangina has variable valve timing. My Vangina's got a 6-speed automatic. My Vangina seats 7 comfortably.
That's the best one, for sure.
My Vangina needs an oil change. My Vangina has a tranny leak at the moment.
You have just been practicing all of this for 8 months, haven't you?
It's so good. It's so, I mean, literally.
You should get a sticker that just says my Vangina, and then it's like a ...
No.
and then sort of the public can fill it in with whatever they like.
You guys can do it. You guys can add comments to the YouTube video on what
To my Vangina.
My Vangina. Yeah. I mean, I love that my Vangina's got a 3.6 liter Pentastar in it.
It's quite a lot of displacement.
Stow and go seats. 2-zone air conditioning, 3-zone air conditioning in my Vangina. It's so stupid. It's so good.
You're making yourself laugh.
My
No,
Vangina has a torsion beam rear suspension. Come on, it doesn't get better than that.
do you think the public will piece together the van part too? A small portion will.
I kind of hope.
You should put a sticker that says "My Van" above the license plate.
I don't want it. It can't be that. Listen, it's one thing for it to make me laugh. It's something else for it to make people uncomfortable if their kids say, "What's Gina?" Right? I mean, mommy, that van's license
you
plate
can't
is
then walk up to this line and then suddenly sort of feign concern for the public.
I want to walk up to the line and maybe tweak it, but I don't want to jump across it screaming. I don't want fuck on the license plate, right? You know, I don't want something that really is offensive. I want something that'll make the parents laugh and the kids not know. So if it says my van, my other car is a Vangina. I mean, come on, it doesn't stop.
You say one thing, but I think when the moment of comedy arrives, you're going to go
I
for
can't.
it.
I really wouldn't want. I like Stunad is great on a license plate. The other plate that I got from my mother years ago when I bought her an E46 was Bafangul. And Bafangul is a New York Italian pronunciation of Vaffanculo, which means go fuck yourself. But it was so obscure that driving around in California, I'm going to say in the 2 years that she had that car here, maybe one person figured it out, right? But it was an inside joke for us that was really funny. Like, because, you know, of course, I bought the car. I put it in the corner of my friend's shop with a big red bow on it. I bring her in. She's like, oh, somebody bought somebody a car. And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, oh, sweet. It's a cute BMW. And oh, with a bow and everything. I'm like, right. And she's like, huh. Oh my God, the license plate's Bafangul. That's amazing. And I'm like, dumbass, it's yours, right? It's like, so it was such a wonderful moment for us. And she cried. And I was like, no, you're supposed to laugh. It's great. Anyway, that plate is now on a Ferrari 550 or 575 in Santa Barbara or something.
Did you sell it or somebody else?
I had it on the SL after my mom's car got stolen and totaled. And the guy who bought the SL said, I will only buy it if you include the license plate. And I'm like, why? And he's like, because I need to put it on my daily, which is a 550 or 575. And I was like, yes, you're totally good. But the funny thing is, I took that license plate, I think I've told this before, to New York with me when the Fiat 500 came out. And I was doing an early story for Automobile on the little new Italian Cinquecento. And so I took the Bafangul plate on it. I had like Italian, like the Italian horns hanging from the rearview mirror. And I drove around Little Italy in the car in Manhattan. And in Manhattan and Brooklyn, everywhere I went, Fangul! Everyone was giving me the finger, laughing. I mean, it was just a spectacle everywhere I went. And that was a little too much. Like you can't have Bafangul as your license plate in New York, but you can in San Francisco.
Okay.
Gina? I mean, it is just a name. It's Gina, right? There are people that have names. Maybe
The jury will determine.
one person in the last 7 billion born in the world.
The public will.
Hey, listen, you could call your kid Dick. You could name
Many
your kid
people
Richard.
do.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. So if Dick is a name, Gina can be a name.
Okay.
That's my story, and I'm
You're
also
practicing
sticking
what
to
you're going to say when you're in
cop.
court.
Yeah. Well, the worst they could do is take it away. But I'll have the pictures, right? Like the Bafangul pictures.
Yes. Right.
I hate everyone, which I'm always worried they're going to take
No,
that away
that's
from me.
fine.
You're not allowed to use H8.
Really?
Yeah, you're not allowed to say hate on the license plate. But that when I was getting the plate, I go into the DMV and there's this like sweetheart of a girl at the thing, and I'm like, "Hi, I'm here for the plate." And when she was like, she laughs when she gets you get a card with the license plate on it, and I see her. She goes in the back and she opens the envelope and just bursts out laughing when she sees the plate. And I'm watching her stop at every single window on the way. And they're laughing. She's like, oh my God, do you believe this plate? Ha ha ha. And they're all laughing and taking fucking selfies with the picture, with the plate. And then she comes up and she's like, I'm sorry, I don't think I can give you this plate. And I was like, why not? And she's like, it could be offensive to someone. And I was like, honey, we're in California. You can say hi to someone and they'll be offended. Everybody is offended by everyone. It's going on a Lotus Elise that's this big and black, and everyone runs me off the fucking road. I need to do whatever it takes to get their attention, wake them up, and just notice that I exist. So it's not me that hates everyone. It's the car. And she was like, okay, but if somebody calls, they're offended. I'm like, I'll say good morning to the wrong person. They'll be offended, and I'll go to jail over it. And she laughed, and I got the plate. So California's a little bit tough with the plates.
Well,
Was. Can do anything you want now.
Really?
Yeah, somebody sued the California Department of Motor Vehicles for a Second Amendment violation.
Free speech?
Free speech. Wow. There was a guy, I think, if I remember correctly, there was a guy who wanted the plate, "I'm gay." And they wouldn't give it to him because they said it was offensive. And he was like, "That's not offensive. That's just what it is." And they denied it. And he sued. It was a class action. It was a bunch of other people suing as well. And the decision came through that it was the DMV's standards for censorship was improperly and unfairly enforced and inconsistently enforced. So they would just randomly, there was stuff that went through and stuff that didn't go through, and they didn't have strict guidelines. And so, boom, the California Supreme Court removed the DMV's.
Oh, Maine has this too. Where because I've seen a bunch of really offensive plates in Maine, or just like plates that would be considered offensive. Yeah. Like there was a E38 7 Series with the plate number "Slut Bus," which I thought was pretty amusing. So yeah, I guess they had something similar going on in Maine.
Yeah, I mean, it happens all the time. My favorite one is I eat the kids.
Oh, like, eat the kids first.
Eat the kids first.
Yeah, because they have a kids first license plate. In Virginia.
Yeah. There's so many really clever. I mean. That I have a folder of thousands of license plate pictures.
There's an Instagram account. I think it's just called Urban Plates, where they have like.
I need to just hand over my collection because I thought I would do an Instagram page at one point but I probably have like 6,000 or 7,000 pictures that I've taken of funny license plates over the years. I mean, my favorite one was the Isuzu.
Yeah, that's the best.
I had an Isuzu pickup truck, and the license plate was ISQUZU. Isuzu. So I called it my Isuzu Poop because it was an Isuzu pup. But yeah,
that's one of my favorites.
Maybe one day we'll do a license plate episode. I'll get my first 200 or 300 funny plates, and we'll do a slideshow. Like, you man, look at this plate and this happened here.
I'll be like, this is not period appropriate. Okay. Anyway, this has been episode, I don't know, what are we at? 110 or 11? 11, maybe, of the Carmudgeon Show, in which we discuss miscellaneous motor swaps of Mercedes-Benzes. Do you want to, Matt, be telling the public about your business, or do you have so much work that you don't want anymore?
Oh, well, I do have quite a bit of work, but the more work I have, the more choosy I can be. So, I guess, yes, if you have interest in a silly Mercedes swap or a not silly Mercedes swap, I do Mercedes swaps. I'm out of Nashville. It's my shop is Kwiek Classics, but it's not spelled the way you think it is.
We'll include
you may have to tell them if you want them to find you.
Yeah. It's Kwiek.
And it sounds like have some interesting stuff potentially in the pipeline. One of my favorites, I think, that will maybe resonate with you is the 190 SL 2.3 16.
No.
Yes.
Ooh.
I'm excited about that one.
Because the worst part of the 190 SL is the engine.
Yes.
So putting a good engine.
Cosworth motor in it.
So, that was actually
for that little car.
Something else. You brought up a 190 2.0 earlier. Mm-hmm. However long ago, you said something about how the 2-liter S14 was the best.
Yeah.
I have a stockpile of 190 16-valve engine parts right now. So if someone could find me a 2-liter M102 8-valve motor, I will build a 190 2.0 16 so we can test that theory on the
about whether the 2.0 16 is better than.
Interesting. So I think the reason in the S14 is because it's a very long stroke and it's a terribly, horribly unrefined motor, and 2.5 is just unacceptable unless you're full throttle. 2.3 is mostly unacceptable, and 2.0 was the sweetest of the bunch. But the 2.3 liter and the 2.5 Mercedes motors are smooth as silk.
Yep.
So I don't know if that would hold true.
It'd be fun.
It would be very fun.
Especially if you get those piston speeds up. Get some serious RPM.
I mean, the block is good for 10,000 out of the gate.
Yeah.
I think the head was good for 9,000 or 10,000.
You know this firsthand.
Well, you got to upgrade the valve springs, but yeah.
Mine definitely was over 8 at one point. I had a friend who has let me drive many of his millions of dollars worth of cars and insisted that he drove the 2316, and he shifted into second at 80 miles an hour. And I heard the tack needle go against its own stopper. No problem. No, so it was anywhere between, I think we calculated out, it was, over 9. No problem.
I routinely wind mine out to about 8. So,
So there you go.
So yeah, many interesting swapping ideas potentially. Making a Pagoda that doesn't suck, I think, is also a good idea.
That is certainly on my list, as well as a V8 190E.
I think you should also do a C43 AMG wagon with a 5.4 liter and a stick.
Funny you mentioned that.
Stay tuned.
Yes, stay tuned. Tune in next year. Okay, anyway, we're wrapping this episode. Thank you for joining us. Thank you so much for all of your wrenching efforts and for coming in and watching us IRL as opposed to listening to us yammer in your ear while you're wrenching. It's
just as fun, maybe more.
Wait until you now have to hear yourself while you're wrenching on listening to this podcast. You're going to hate. You're going to realize you just said, "Oh God, there's the Michigan."
All right, join us next week for additional Carmudgeoning, unless we haven't done next week's, in which case it might be the week after that. But we'll be Carmudgeoning, and maybe come see us in Detroit as well.
September 23rd, Detroit Concord Elegance.
All right. Thank you.